Hi, it's such a pleasure to be joining the ASLE Conference Emergency. We are in the beautiful Bay Area, and we are honored to be part of this distinguished panel and grateful to all the people who are joining this conversation, these important conversations from all over the world. My name is Leslie Carol Roberts.
It's likewise an honor for me to be here as well. My name is Chris Falliers, a third member of our collaboration. Adam Marcus is on sabbatical and won't be on this talk. We wanted to start this talk with a look and listen at 30 seconds of our most recent work, How We Hear Now.
Hello. This Ansible recording was made proximate to Yalamu, aka San Francisco, and 04-22-20, aka Earth Day. The exact place time cannot be shared.
How We Hear Now is a collaborative work produced by the Ecopoesis project, a multidisciplinary initiative which assembles people and materials to better see what it means to all live together in a heating world. And by all, we mean all. The tuna fish, the Monte cypress, the lupine, the Homo sapien, the coral, the penguin, the fungi, and on and on. Zooming way out, our work is about the value of reminding people of the role of the original social media: storytelling, conversation, and thoughtful response. Ecologies, design, and art are the cornerstones of the Ecopoesis project and core to our sensibilities as humans.
We don't intend that Ecopoesis, either the overall initiative or any of its individual projects, is about solving, in technical ways, human response to climate crisis, nor is it about inventing new technological innovations. Our specific practice of ecological storytelling and gatherings produces texts, objects, performances, and representations derived from close readings, observations of existing ecologies, and from speculative research designed to end our disciplinary isolation.
A little backstory on our work as a collaboratory. The Ecopoesis project began in June 2018 in San Francisco as a critical intervention around ecological discourse and made work, what we refer to as the materiality of ecologies, prompted by our curiosity about how we might converse more fluently about the grief and despair increasingly used to frame thought. We were curious to explore how groups could express their layered and complex feelings about mounting statistics of loss, from bleached reefs around the Maldives to the infamous plastic vortex of the Pacific to shrinking polar ice. We imagined there could be an opportunity for collective solace, moving towards feelings of hope. Not hope in the Pollyanna way, of course, but the aspect of hope that calms and frees the mind to begin grieving and then plotting, designing, and enacting responses for ecological survival. Once again, we look towards the poet William Blake. Joy and woe are woven fine, a clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. We aspired towards landing on some very soothing ecological messages collaboratively, because ecologies are not, in our definition, solely about those kittens and ponies and badgers and bamboo and Joshua trees, but about something far more abstract. So we need to work to express these feelings, this ecological aboutness. Then perhaps we can slip as humans from a mindset of certainty to a mindset of doubt and fear. Fear does not need to be a bad thing. This is part of the tantric thread, this destabilization of certainty. Neoliberalism wants us all to show up at the factory or mine each day to dig and assemble. What happens when we are too afraid to go outside, however, because of viral stalkers or horrific wind and rain and cold? How can we share stories of our feelings about these things and find listeners? COVID-19 is a deeply confusing time, laced with both paranoia and rage in many instances, as well as shifting, overlaid instructions. Wash hands and all food items. Don't wear a mask. Now don't wash food items and do wear a mask and don't ride on elevators. It causes humans to feel depressed or to languish or both.
The history of ecological storytelling, from Paleolithic cave paintings to utopian imaginaries and dystopian nightmares, illustrates human fascination with non-human and the struggle to depict and enact human relational identity to varied, shifting ecologies. What strikes is that the cave painters did not feel disempowered from representing their world with art as a way of making sense of it, even though they were far from seeing the big picture that we have access to as their descendants. It is part of our problem, we ask, through Ecopoesis, that we are squinting so hard at the big picture we lose sight of how powerful we are as individuals. So our classes, gatherings, and made work are geared towards moving away from sage on the stage gurus from across sciences and humanities, humans whose statements may unwittingly cut most of us off from our native wisdom. Instead, we encourage individuals to see the climate crisis as something we can all collaborate on. Let's not forget that any deity resides in the human breast, as Blake noted. Ecologies are spiritual, not religious. Spirit, of course, from the Greek for breath. And eerily, COVID-19 turns out to be all about breath, how the virus learned it could be airborne, could be breathed in. What How We Hear Now does in a small way is mix the local conditions and how they are experienced by an individual with global phenomena and how it is most often understood by sensors and data collection. Take the background noise of the visual project. The pulsing color field background is a visualization of global seismic data for the same day, April 22nd, Earth Day. The translation of seismic data combined with conversational observations foregrounds these local, global, or individual machine combinations, hopefully replacing philosophical and theoretical voices with an idea of we are here now. How We Hear Now explores what does it mean to do a planet-scale design project, one wholly bowing to the idea of a flat ontology. This is also a global narrative, where birds and plants have voices on the same footing as humans. From Wallace Stevens's Blackbird and his attempt to assemble fragments to approach an understanding of a whole, How We Hear Now attempts to assemble many voices, many places, within a layering of text, visual abstraction, and sound. We acknowledge that the design of How We Hear Now is not the most efficient way to listen, but as a core aspect of the political statement of the piece, how we suggest that efficiency is the language of neoliberal capitalism. Emotions are not efficient. Efficiency is not ecological. Efficiency is killing us all.
As our everyday physical and psychic lives are increasingly suffused with the impacts of climate change and climate chaos, as witnessed in immense fires in the American West, Siberia, Australia, and the Amazon, 100-year floods globally, exploding methane pockets in the Arctic, and other terrors, we argue for new narratives to actively and critically reframe through syntax, diction, form, media, and representation of ecologies. We also point towards the first Earth Day in 1970 and the shifting environmental philosophy it signaled, such as ideas of precarity, scarcity, recycling, and soaring human populations, as well as activist work to preserve land free from human extraction technologies and other development. While environmental philosophy highlighted issues of ethics and values, aesthetics and ecofeminism were already established aspects of philosophical inquiries. In addition, we discuss ideas of how other graphic symbols create often false or confusing ideas of how refuse and human byproducts are being managed. Perhaps the most global example is the triangular recycling symbol, which describes a fake lore narrative. It is important to point out that the modes and approaches of the Ecopoesis project have been reoccurring through Western ecological cultural history for decades, if not centuries, including contemporary performances of eco-activism, such as Greta Thunberg and the School Strike for Climate Change, the youth-based Sunrise Movement, and the XR Rebellion, based in London, but spreading globally, then through to documentary film projects such as An Inconvenient Truth from 2006, directed by Davis Guggenheim, which follows Al Gore as he amplifies discussions of ecological collapse. Indeed, eco-cinema and its critique are expanding fields in their own right. Our methodologies are dialogical, with the understanding that storytelling is the original social media. So a core goal is the practice of interactions through varied technologies, gatherings, and prompts. At the same time, we want to counter the term used to describe our epoch, Anthropocene, derived from the Greek anthropo for man and scene for new, coined by and then popularized respectively by biologist Eugene Stormer and chemist Paul Crutzen in 2000. The use of Anthropocene with its apocalyptic tropes is the subject of considerable discussion and debate. This discussion landed in the Humanities as Eco-Criticism and Environmental Philosophy, which first made inroads in the Academy in the 1980s. The term eco-criticism was coined by William Reichardt in 1978, but was preceded by works such as Annette Kolodny's retrospectively ecofeminist The Lay of the Land from 1975, which examines the gendered discourse involved in the colonization of America. In The End of Man, A Feminist Counter-Apocalypse Now, author Joanna Zielinska writes, "With all these different conceptual threads and points of inquiry, what I am concerned about first and foremost are the unspoken anxieties, desires, and fantasies that the finalism denoted by the end of man prophecies implies."
Now, to look structurally at the How We Hear Now project. In March 2020, we launched a call for submissions for How We Hear Now, a collective sound installation that invites participants to engage in audible changes in their local environments to record and transmit how, as humans moved into isolation, non-human ecologies grew noticeably more audible during the pandemic's shelter-in-place orders. We invited each participant to construct a sound recording of their environment on Earth Day, the 50th anniversary in 2020, and provide a description of ecological or cultural factors. How We Hear Now is a collaborative project. It offers an open-ended field of text, recording, and visual patterns to create an immersive space of reading and listening. With no beginning and or prescribed sequence, it simply asks participants and listeners to consider, how do we hear the world now? Each iteration of How We Hear Now is unique. The sequence and overlap of individual contributions is programmed to vary with each encounter of the work, producing new patterns, rhythms, experiences, and unanticipated connections between the individual recordings and voices. Each local contribution offers a different narrative of environmental experience, leading to an ever-incomplete, collective, global recording. The project offers viewers and listeners a prompt to consider their own sense of environmental presence and its complex nature. On another level, the project is an open framework that can be transformed for future iterations to different circumstances and remain open for additional participatory input. We collaborated with Patrick Monte, Berlin-based artist and designer in technology, whose work engages with collective performance, projected images, and data-driven processes. We compiled global entries into a dynamic, layered narrative of ecological observation. The audio recordings and environmental descriptions were stitched together into a multi-voiced weave of sound and text, an oral landscape of ecological observation, reflecting the pandemic realities. The individual contributions meld together with a visualization of seismic data representing concurrent geological noise occurring at a planetary scale. Encouraging reflection on the materiality of environmental experience, the project acts as a transmitter, collecting and sharing these through observation, sound, and text.
In conclusion, we continue to explore how our methods might evolve and be applied as social distancing recedes, and we begin normalizing group interactions in schools, in concert halls, and offices. The realities of the pandemic posed a challenge as to how to bring people together. This project experiments with gathering individual voices and experiences within the evolving knowledge of climate crisis. It allowed us to consider new vehicles and formats to weave individual experiences towards a collective story. Thanks again so much for being with us today. We are happy to make class and program visits to both share this work and conduct workshops on how you can make your own Ecopoesis projects across disciplines at your schools and institutions for diverse audiences throughout the globe. And we'd like to conclude with the others' voices, the voices that joined us and shared their thoughts so generously to create How We Hear Now. Thank you.
Everything is different. It feels like the present is some unfamiliar place, even though it's the only place I've ever lived.